Hey folks, welcome back for session 3 of creating your book cover. It's me again, Charlie, and I'm going to give you a quick recap of what we've done so far. So in the first session, we explored research and looking at your creative voice, how to generate ideas, how to develop them, and how to record them. After that, we expanded those ideas. We looked at how to create thumbnails and looked in detail about how composition works and how successful composition can be created. In today's session, we're going to look at developing line work from all of these ideas, these amazing thumbnails, and how best to do it using things like reference and exploring different materials. As always, don't forget we're going to have little activities during the session and some little things to get done afterwards. You won't need any special equipment, just the basics again. Creating our final line work. Again, today we're going to need pens and pencils, any other drawing materials that you have available to you, at least 2 bits of paper, A3 or A4, and your thumbnails from last time. Just like last time, quick warm up. So get that plain bit of paper and as usual, fold it in half for me. The first challenge I'm going to give you is drawing a car. That's fair enough, but you're only allowed to use circles for this one and you have 60 seconds. So just circles, draw for me, any car you want. Ready, steady, go. And the next challenge on the other half of the bit of paper, I want you to draw a cross between a cat and a bat. These are going to look adorable or terrifying, whichever direction you want to take in. Again, gutted I can't see them, but another 60 seconds on the other half of the paper. Ready, steady, go. Now that we've had a little warm up and we feel a little bit more alive, let's get cracking on today's session. First of all, we're going to explore basic drawing skills before we get stuck into creating our final line work. Of course, not all covers are traditionally drawn or have drawing in them, but traditional drawing skills can be so useful and improve so many different skills within your creative practice, even if drawing isn't something that you want to do in the future. Drawing skills can help you improve your knowledge of composition, and remember last time we went over loads of things to do with composition. Drawing will help fully hardwire that knowledge into your brain. You'll get a better understanding of things like contrast and line work, so the weight of your line work, the depth of it. You'll be more adept at creating and visualizing ideas, so being able to draw will help you visualize your ideas much better. From a practical standpoint, your hand-eye coordination will improve, and it will help you overcome fears of being wrong, because learning any new skill comes with being not great at it at the beginning. There is no one right or wrong way to learn how to draw or to improve our current drawing skills. But there are certain things that you can focus your energy and your time on in order to help it improve just that little bit quicker or more organically. And we're going to cover all of these today. We're going to look at 4 key areas, which is using reference, so using an image or a piece of reference to draw from, using tools correctly, and I've put correctly in quotations there because things aren't correct or incorrect in the way that you use a lot of them, but there are ways to use certain tools which can help you improve further. Looking at experimentation and exploration, and lastly is refining from roughs, so not jumping straight into that final piece. First of all, like I mentioned, we're going to look at using reference and how reference can help us improve our drawing skills and any final pieces and projects we jump into. Reference can mean so much more than just drawing what we see. We can use reference to help us improve loads of aspects of our visual creative work. From things like colour palettes, to set design, which is the objects that we see in the scenes, lighting behaviour, which isn't just making sure lighting behaves itself, it's the way it responds to things. Form and anatomy, which are the obvious reasons for using reference. Texture and perspective, and I'm going to quickly go over all of those and why and how reference can help. First of all is looking at colour and colour palettes. So I used to be a bit rubbish with colour because I was presented with digital colour, and with digital colour you are given every colour ever, and I used to just default to making every piece I ever did a rainbow hellscape, like a complete rainbow mess. Every colour would be in there. But it doesn't need to be like that. By researching and referencing colour and using references to find palettes and practicing true to life colour, your work will get an extra dimension to it in terms of the colour that it's communicating. Next is set design. So as I mentioned, set design can just mean the assets or the objects in the scene. So using reference to discover what sort of things can go into that scene. For example, my illustration here, lots of different plants and mosses and rocks, and reference really helped to make those come alive a little bit more and be less default, be less just spiky bits for grass or just circles for rocks. Reference helped these expand and become something a bit more original. I mentioned lighting behaviour as well, and again, doesn't just mean making sure that lighting doesn't do anything naughty, it's how lighting responds to different surfaces, different situations, environments, brightnesses. You need to use reference in order to fully understand how light behaves, because it isn't just a case of this bit's brighter, this bit's darker. There's so many rules and interesting behaviours that light has when it's in different environments, and reference can help you improve your knowledge of how that works and put that into your work. The obvious one for reference is form and anatomy, so things like life drawing and portraiture and still life can help improve your knowledge of recreating something that's three-dimensional into a two-dimensional space. Using reference to learn accurate anatomy and to create believable multi-dimensional drawings can improve every single part of your work. Even if you're not literally drawing an object or a person, having a knowledge of creating those two-dimensional things from a three-dimensional idea will help improve your work massively. Next is texture. So texture will just mean the surface, the area that you're working on, trying to make it look like more than a paper texture, than whatever it is you're physically drawing on. Using different textures and understanding how to recreate different textures can add so much depth to your work, and using reference will help you practice loads of different textures, because there's so many out there. When we try and just pull them from the top of our brain, it can be hard to think of really original, unique ones. But using reference, we can work out the different textures we can start recreating. Next up is perspective, and I am rubbish at perspective, so I need to do more practice in this. I need to leave my comfort zone more with this. But when you are practicing perspective and learning how to create those vanishing points and those areas of depth in your illustrations, you need to use reference again to accurately represent them, to make them look believable. I'm going to quickly go over some do's and don'ts when it comes to improving your drawing and how you're going to go about practicing your drawing skills. Again, these are not set in stone, these are not to the letter laws of drawing, but if you bear them in mind, if you think about them as you're going through your practice, it'll help. Do make sure you use multiple images for your reference to make it interesting and original. By all means, just copy a photograph or copy something in front of you to practice those elements. But when you're creating a final piece, make sure you use multiple images. Explore more than just form. So we went over just now all the different things that reference can help. Color, texture, lighting, perspective. Loads of different areas of your practice can be aided with reference. And try to get into the habit of taking your own reference photos. So if you've got a phone with a camera in it, or a little camera at home, anything at all, just going about your day-to-day life, if you see something interesting, just get into the habit of taking a photo of it and building your own reference library. Now are some things to avoid. When finding your reference images, do avoid overly edited ones like this one I've put here. It's not a representation of reality. If you try to use this to study lighting, you're going to have a real bad time. Overly edited or overly photoshopped images, especially with portraiture and things like that, can lead us down a road where we start to ingrain mistakes into our drawing. Copying images directly should be avoided, especially when you're posting them online. So if you just want to practice, if this is just in your sketchbook, then absolutely go ahead. But if you get to the stage when you want to post your work online or you want to sell prints of your work, just be aware that photographers have copyright over their images. And if you copy them directly and post them, you are technically breaching their copyright. So respect the photographer's work as well as your own. And avoid using other drawings as reference. So as much as we may love stylized drawings and we may love someone else's style or an adapted style, try not to use those as reference, because those people would have developed little errors and little mistakes in their work and you'll just be injecting that into yours. Develop your own creative voice by learning the rules before you break them with stylization. So to demonstrate the importance of reference and how reference is very relevant to what we do, I'm going to give you another little challenge. Without using reference, and this is hard for me to do when I'm not in the room and keeping an eye on you, but no Googling, no checking, no references. Without using reference, I want you to please draw for me a rhino. You can do this on the back of your folded bit of paper because we're going to need two sides again. So on one half of the back of your folded piece from earlier, draw for me please a rhino in 60 seconds and no reference allowed for this one. Ready, steady, go. Now you've all finished your masterpieces. Well done. You've all got rhino drawings. Quite hard, isn't it? If we see a picture of a rhino, we know what that is. But the second we try and pull that information from our brain, it goes a bit weird. We sort of forget, like, do they have a tail? What do their ears look like? What do their feet look like? It is quite tricky. So now I'm going to show you a picture of a rhino. And I want you to real quick compare the reference to your pulled from your imagination drawing. There's going to be a few little errors in there. And that's because as much as we like to think we know what something looks like, when we're trying to get that on paper, it can and will have errors. And when we're trying to get something accurate and true to life, we need to be using reference. So on the other half of that page, I'm going to give you another 60 seconds, and I want you to please redraw your rhino, but this time I will leave the reference up and you must draw from reference. So lots of looking at the paper, looking at the rhino, looking up and down, lots of checking against this reference. So another 60 seconds. Ready, steady, go. Okay, rhino's all finished. Now compare your from reference rhino to your without reference rhino. And notice the improvement. And that improvement was achieved in 60 seconds. All we did was we added reference. That's the only element of this that changed, is we added reference. That's how much reference can improve your drawing skills. Next, we're going to look at the practical parts of drawing, so the physical making of the drawing. It's important to note that there's no foolproof, perfect technique for drawing. Everyone's methods are different, but there are certain things we can explore and certain things we can remember whilst we are going forward with the physical part of drawing that will help us improve. So we're going to look at some useful drawing techniques, because just like working from reference, it's a good idea to explore existing things, existing techniques, existing images before we start jumping into creating our own. First off is we're going to look at drawing from the elbow. When I say drawing from the elbow, I don't literally mean you tape a pencil to your elbow, funnily enough. What I mean instead is relying more on the movement from your elbow joint than you do from the movement from your wrist or your fingers. You can see here I'm relying on my wrist and my fingers to try and draw a straight line and steady patterns, and it looks a bit nervous, it looks a bit wobbly. But if I were to draw from my elbow, the lines are much straighter and much more controlled. You can create much more interesting gestures from drawing from your elbow as well. And on a practical standpoint, it's quicker. So more interesting steady waves than if you were to do little nervous drawing from the wrist lines. Mark making, creating steady lines, creating parallel lines especially. You can see there the difference between drawing from the elbow and drawing from the wrist. Next is using silhouettes in our illustration work. To show you what I mean by using silhouettes and considering silhouettes when you're creating your artwork, I'm going to do a couple of very quick drawings of my dog, of Lola. So here's the first one where I'm not considering the silhouette. Everything's just drawn where I put it at the time. But this one will consider the silhouette. And I will show you in a minute what I mean by the impact a silhouette has. Now I'm going to take these two drawings and put this translucent paper over the top so I can just see through. And with a big chunky marker, I'm going to go over them and show you what the silhouette of each of these drawings looks like. And the silhouette is something that's often absorbed by the audience or by the viewer of your work very quickly. And you can immediately see one has a very distinctive silhouette and one doesn't. So one of them works a lot better than the other in terms of communication. Next up is looking at wireframe methods. Wireframe method is a good demonstration of what I've been saying lately about working with roughs and then refining afterwards. So a wireframe is just shapes and lines to map out where your artwork is going to go. And I've quickly done it here with yet another drawing of Lola. So you can see very rough circles and lines joining them together. Over the top with a darker colour, I'm going to use that wireframe and draw the details in. This ensures that I don't mismeasure something or do something wrong early on and the final piece doesn't get affected by those mistakes. And lastly, using tools with much less control. I'm going to go over a few tools that have less control. First of all is this chisel tip permanent marker. And the big flat tip that it's got is perfect for creating accidental shapes or accidental line weights in places you weren't planning on having them. You'd be surprised how much value there is in accidentally making something. I'm going to demonstrate as well with this little bit of charcoal here that I found. And there's literal accidental lines that come from it because of the shape of it. It's amazing how much you can gain from taking away your very refined, careful control with your materials. Same goes for this big chunky graphite stick. If you've ever got access to one of these are really nice because especially you can't rub them out very well. So you lose control in terms of the chunkiness and the way you can hold it. You can see there I'm holding it differently to a normal pencil. You lose control there, and I can't then go in and rub it out. And next is quite a chunky paintbrush. And I know it might sound horrible losing control over what it is you're drawing, but at this planning stage, at this working out stage, experimenting, exploring, it's exactly what you want. Because you may well discover a shape or a colour or a texture you weren't expecting. So I'm going to blob in this green, waited for it to dry for a minute, and then using any old colour, doesn't have to be true to life, I'm going to do another self-portrait in case you hadn't already worked that out. That lack of control, that lack of being able to go in and change it and fix it really helps. Just like we did with reference, we're now going to have a look at a few little do's and don'ts for drawing. Again, not set in stone, not very strict rules, but they will help you moving forward with learning your drawing skill. First off, the don'ts. Don't work really tiny all the time. It can be tempting when you're not super confident about your work, when you're not confident about your skills, to keep the drawing really, really little, because if it's smaller, the mistakes are smaller as well. But try to get used to working on a larger scale, and I don't mean painting a whole wall necessarily, but just making the drawing fill the page a little bit more. So try and get out of the habit of drawing teeny weeny little drawings and try making some bigger ones. Don't draw from your imagination 100% of the time. It is, of course, fine to draw from your imagination. It's freeing, it's lovely, it's fun, it's relaxing, but don't do it 100% of the time. Don't sit in your little box of I will only draw from my imagination. Remember, injecting reference into your work doesn't just mean I have to copy this thing, I have to draw this thing perfectly and accurately. But using reference and bringing reference into your work habits and work techniques will help your imagination work improve hugely. A bit of a silly one, but one that I see far too often. Don't have your face too close to what you're drawing. And I know this sounds weird, It is a habit we pick up from childhood when we're trying to be really, really precise. But don't work with the paper here. If you work digitally, don't work with the canvas zoomed in all the time. You need to step back a little bit. You need to physically move yourself back from your work occasionally to see how everything is working together. Remember when we discussed composition in the last session? It's important to realize how every element and every aspect of this piece is working together, because that's how the audience is going to absorb it. The audience isn't going to go up to your book cover and go, oh yeah, no, I like that bit. They're going to see it on a shelf, or they're going to see it online from a distance. So don't work here too often. Plus, that's bad for your eyes. And you might get pencil on your nose, and that's not a good look. And the last don't is don't beat yourself up whilst you're learning. Everyone starts somewhere, just like this masterpiece that I made when I was a tiny child. Everybody starts somewhere. No one is born able to draw. So do not beat yourself up as you are learning this skill, because that's what you're doing, learning. Not having learned, not being done, you are learning, and that's fine. Now for some more positive ones, some do's. Do vary your materials. I know some of you will have favourites. I know some of you will be dead set, love working with pencil, love working with this particular fine liner, love working in Photoshop. But do, especially at the stage you're at now in education, vary your materials. Try loads of different paints, collages, textures, print techniques, loads and loads of different areas. Even just for half a day or an hour, just play with them. So try all these different things that you've seen floating around. If you see something lying around in the studio at school or at home, pick up like a tea bag, a coffee, anything, and try drawing with it. Even if you don't create a final piece with that, you will develop other skills in the background to do with control and colour and learning how materials and feelings and textures work. Do leave your comfort zone occasionally. So whether that's drawing hands, which no one likes to draw, or drawing human faces, or buildings, or cars, or animals, or abstract pieces, or backgrounds, whatever it is that's outside of your comfort zone, try to occasionally jump into that. And I'm not saying be out of your comfort zone all the time, because that'll be exhausting and it will burn you out, and you'll probably end up resenting drawing on the whole. So do leave your comfort zone occasionally. Come back in when you need to recharge, but the best way to get your work and your creativity to improve is leaving that comfort zone. Do use reference and use it well. Remember the do's and don'ts for using reference that we discussed a minute ago. Make sure that you do that throughout your practice, throughout your projects. Make the most of it. And remember, it isn't just copying what you see. There's so many other elements to using reference. Do use contrast and gesture and boldness. Don't try and make everything the same shade of grey. Don't make everything quiet and little, going back to having tiny, tiny drawings. Be a bit braver with your work. You can make mistakes now. You can do bad art now. I still do bad art. Like every established artist on the planet still does bad art, but we learn something from it. Occasionally we'll go into something thinking this is going to be terrible, and we finish it and we're like, oh no, actually, hold on, I can use that. So be brave and be bold with what you're creating and try so many different things. So try the big gestures, try the black and white right next to each other, not just the grey that's in the middle. Try loads of different brave, bold things. So let's quickly explore the materials we can use to apply these lessons to. Drawing in itself, the term drawing, the act of drawing, doesn't just have to be pencils. My goodness, it does not just have to be pencils. Anything that leaves a mark is drawing. So we can draw with chalk, with a rubber, collage, like I said earlier, tea and coffee. You can use a stick. Anything that leaves a mark can be and is drawing. So drawing materials don't just have to be limited to that HB pencil. But what if you say, I just want to use pencils? Exploration and experimentation helps every single skill within your creative roster improve. And as I've said, and I've stressed so many times, right now is the perfect time to be doing that. You may well discover a skill or a real passion or love for something you didn't know you had. I know I used to be very adverse to watercolours, for example. I used to not want to use watercolours because every watercolour I'd ever seen had been a painting of a church or something that I wasn't interested in. But the second I started using them and playing with them, figuring out different contemporary interesting ways to use that material, I picked up loads of different skills. You can always combine these materials. If you still want to use pencil, if you still want to use graphite, combine them with others, because it doesn't matter if it doesn't work. Do remember that. That's a really important lesson for me to get across to you today. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work from the beginning, because you are still learning something from it. Let's try some out. Let's try out some different materials. I'm going to go through whatever materials I've got lying around in this room right now to make some little marks, make some sketches, do some doodles. You're welcome to draw along with me if you'd like, but I'm going to try out a bunch of things that I've just got lying around in my house. I just scrounged around in my studio and tried to find whatever I could. So I've got the basics, got a pencil, got just some random felt tips that I found somewhere. I'm just going to draw a bunch of plants for you because they're quick, they're easy, and all I'm doing is experimenting with materials. This is a good little exercise to do, actually. Plants are great because they're fairly abstract. You don't need to worry about them being accurate or anything like that. You won't have to worry about anatomy. It can be any shape you want, and you can just do a big garden of them using a different bit of material, using a different method for every plant. You've got a highlighter as well. I love using highlighters for drawing. They're really nice as well if ever you get the opportunity to do life drawing or drawing a model. Highlighters are lovely to use for that. And the old trusty coloured pencil, of course. I've got 8 billion of them. I love them. Using a pencil slightly on the side to create a big area of graphite mess as well. And then working into that graphite mess with something else, with reducing what you've created. Rubbers can be really nice in making gorgeous textures and working in negative, so light on top of dark. Of course, got to have a play with a bit of paint. Whatever paint you prefer. Some people like oils and thicker paints. I personally like water-based, so I like watercolours and gouache as well, which is a lovely type of paint you can try. Got acrylic here, and I couldn't be bothered to put it in a palette, so straight on through the tube. I really like the line it made, actually. I love the way it layered over the top of the highlighter specifically. And collage. Don't underestimate the value of collage, especially those lovely ripped paper textures that you get along the edge. Those can be really nice, especially if you combine them with wet mediums. So things like watercolour and acrylic. Combining that ripped edge with those can create really nice contrasts and different depths in the pigment of the paint. Just gonna doodle on top of that. This was really fun to do. And as well, I just had lying around, because I have 4 billion of them, some nail polish. I have so much nail polish. You can draw with anything. Remember, anything that leaves a mark. It doesn't have to be for drawing. It could be anything at all. Tea, coffee, nail polish, a stick, mud, depending on how feral you want to get with this. Just try whatever you've got lying around. Now that we've had a play, now that we've had an explore, let's discover how we can inject all of this into this book cover project that we're doing. You should have your thumbnails from last time, so get a fresh bit of paper and we're going to start working out our cleaned up line work. First of all, we're going to rough out where things are going to go. Remember when we had a look at the wireframe method and building on top of roughs and refining later? That's what we're going to be doing with this final piece. Now is a good time to be looking at these other materials. So maybe using a lighter pencil or a lighter colour is a good thing to do for this initial planning stage. So give that a go. Remember, you can always start it again if you want to, but that's the perfect way to lay the foundation for this line work. Now, it may take you a bit longer than today's session to finish all of your line work. So that's going to be your main thing on your to-do list after today. But I do want to leave you with some important things to remember about drawing, because there's an awful lot of self-confidence issues and worries and anxieties surrounding drawing and creativity a lot of the time. Practice is the literally only way that drawing skills are improved. This is something that I've learned over the years, that nobody is born able to draw. The amount of times I will hear people say, "Oh, you're so talented. It's this amazing talent. I wish I had that talent." But really what it is it's a honed skill. It's something I have worked really hard on rather than a talent. Sometimes I get a little bit adverse to the word talent because it seems like it's been given. It's a gift. It's an amazing present that I got given. When really it's something that I've worked at for 28 years to get good at. So don't worry about not being at the stage where you're confident about your work just yet. It is all practice. So those who say they wish they could draw, they wish they could do that, just need to do it. They just need to practice it. They just need to get in there and hone that skill. Because like I said, the only reason I am any good at it is because I've been practicing for 28 years. 28 years. So practice. That's the only way you will get good at drawing. So do not worry about not being happy about it just yet. You will get there. Your to-do list between now and the next session is to finish that final book cover drawing. So finish that final line work, get it all ready for colour and texture that we're going to be applying next time. So you are just doing the line work. You are not adding colour just yet. We're jumping into that for the next session. Thank you ever so much for joining me for session 3. Hopefully I will see you again for session 4, where we're adding all that beautiful colour and texture, and we're going to explore colour palettes and how it can help enhance your work. So I hope you had fun today, and I will see you next time. Bye!